What is going on, y'all? Welcome back to the Running and Gunning podcast with your host, Justin Sinan. Super stoked to have you joining us this evening. We've got a great guest lined up. I hope you guys are sitting down because this one's probably going to be packed with some good laughs. I've got Brent Davis in the studio. This is definitely going to be a good one. Brent kind of flies under the radar. A lot of you guys might know of him if you're on the Mobile Hunters United. He's usually on there posting some funny videos, but the dude is an absolute killer also. And I was really excited to have him on, just kind of pick his brain about how he's, been able to get on several really big deer and a lot of times being mobile. And so just hang on to your seats and enjoy this one. Brett, what's going on, man?
What's up, man? Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. So we're recording Brent is in his classroom right now. And it is awesome. I'm super jealous. I wish that I was a student of yours. It looks like a fun place to have class. It's got a deer mount, bobcat. Is there a turkey back there too?
There's all kinds of stuff. There's a turkey. There's a pheasant. Lots of skulls. In fact, I get new skulls every day. Today I got a catfish skull and a hip bone. I don't get apples from the students. They bring me like dead animals. Yeah,
that's awesome. That is awesome, man. What is that? Well, obviously, so you're a school teacher. Why don't you give some of our listeners just a little background?
Yeah. So I am in Central Illinois, 5th grade science teacher. Been passionate about the outdoors my whole life. Born and raised right here in the same place. This school is where I went to school, and I've been in the outdoors since I could walk and go with my dad, and just been a passion since I can remember. And now I get to even teach it. You know, we're using Onyx and going out on our nature area every day, and mapping contour lines and studying animals with trail cameras, and so it's pretty great to be able to teach about the things that you love.
Absolutely, man. That is so cool. I never knew that that's a pretty awesome science teacher, so what you generally do a lot of like nature stuff when you can, I guess, and then
we got
try to mix it up.
The school is unique in that it has a 50 some acre nature area behind the school, of just the wooded area. And there's a nature trail through it. When I was in high school, we went out there all the time. There's literally nobody ever out there anymore except for me. But you got that resource in your backyard. I was not a student that could learn from a book. I know that's a shocker. I was poster child ADHD kid that couldn't sit still. But when I went outside, I could apply everything that they were talking about if I could see it. And, it's kind of how we use that nature trail. And we're out there all the time. If it's not raining, we're outside.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that, man. I remember being younger and really enjoying like that one. I feel like there was only one or two teachers that we could go do that with. But so what's hanging out back there? Did you guys find any sheds? Any good bucks chilling?
Well, that I got a good story about a target buck that will start there. I don't know if you want to jump right into that.
No, let's do that, because that was kind of how we initiated. I was like, man, I'd love to have you on. Because he's got some awesome stories. So why don't you kick into that?
So this deer, I've thought a lot about how I wanted to talk about this, because, it's not hard to figure out where I'm at. The one thing with it that doesn't really bother me is many things have changed as far as how the deer move through this area and everything. But when I've taught for 21 years in this district. I moved up to this building from a different building. I taught 2nd grade for a lot of years, and moved up to this building to do science. And the first year that I did it, there's 4 sections of science, and my son was a 5th grader, and he was in another class, but I would get him for science. We rotate. That's all I teach is science. So got to bully my kid daily. But that first year, I was doing stuff on the nature trail, and I've lived here my whole life, and I never really heard anything about big deer being in this area. We're right in town, basically on the edge. And it's not super covered, but we had cameras out there, and we were talking about topography lines and how the contour lines allow animals to travel through a forest, and you could predict movement based off that. And, I was basically trying to teach them about valleys, and you follow the bottom of the valley and the deer are going to move through here, or any animal. So we put cameras up, and they would choose a spot on the map on Onyx on our smart board and drop a pin there based on where they thought maybe animals would travel. Yeah, so we'd go out into the nature trail, and they'd walk to that pin, and see if they still thought it looked like a good spot. So it was an easy way to get them to see the connection there. And then we'd put a camera there, and we'd, keep track of how many animals came through there, and, just keep documenting it. Well, I would always go out there and pull the cameras or the cards, on my lunch or whatever. I'm literally out there every single day, most every day. And so I went and pulled the cards, and, we had a wall outside of my room that was showing all the animals we were finding, and, rabbits and cats and homeless people and, normal things like that. So we, it was one day in November, and I hadn't had a deer. It was the first year I was here, and I hadn't had a deer over 115, in there. Well, It was like maybe November 1st. And I pull this card, and I come in, and I'm on my lunch, and I put it in my computer, and I mean, it's a double drop tine mega, giant. And I'm freaking out. So I go pull my son out of class, and I'm like, you got to come in my classroom and see this. And I show him this picture of this deer looking at it, and I'm like, but you can't tell anybody. He goes, what do you mean? The students are studying this. We got to show them. That's something they found. I'm like, that picture's getting put on the back burner.
That's right.
And so I immediately, start looking around on Onyx. Is there anywhere I could hunt near here? Because there's no hunting on the nature trail.
That was my next question. So I'm glad you answered that.
Not at all. Okay. And, I've been accused of, oh, come on. I'm not going to put my job at jeopardy. Yeah. I'm not going to put my job at jeopardy to be able to go back there. That's just stupid. So I start calling people, and this is in, there's not many big parcels in here. So I secured some places to put some cameras, and one spot that I could hunt. And it was like 30-acre pasture, but maybe an acre of trees. And where this spot was probably the best pinch point I've ever seen. It's near a railroad track. The railroad track goes underneath a road here, so it makes an opening, and it's the only place that deer can go from one side of the road to where the real cover is. Mm-hmm. And so I put a camera there, and I had permission to hunt that if I wanted to. And I didn't think much of it. Well, I started getting lots of pictures of this deer coming through that spot. Now, another side story to this, there's been a legend of this, urban legend of this double drop tine buck in this town forever, like being downtown. And, I've heard about it for years, but there's no way it could have been the same deer. Well, I owned a farm on the opposite side of town, like the entire city between here and there. Mm-hmm. And supposedly that deer had been on this farm. I never ever got a picture. I got one picture. In 3 years, I got one picture of that deer on that farm that everybody assumed is where he was. Yeah. And I never did. But there's a old railroad bed that isn't a railroad anymore that goes through town, and it's just a depression. And the deer would get in that and travel to the other side of town. And I would get pictures of the same deer on both properties. But I hadn't ever gotten that one. The first day I go into, I needed an east wind to hunt this stand, and it's super, super small. Like you're either going to kill it or you're not. Like there's no way you could go in there and hunt it a lot. So the first day I finally got the wind I needed, and I was getting pictures of him regularly within an hour of sunrise, one way or the other, every day. So I wait for the east wind. I go in there, and it's like 2 hours after sunrise. Hadn't seen a deer. That's another thing. Anytime I ever sat there, rarely would you see a deer, but that deer was coming through there a lot. So
I got you. It was just one of those odd spots, I guess.
It was. Yep. Yeah. And 2 hours go by. He's never come through. So, I stand up to stretch and turn around. I was going to get down. Turn around. I kind of look back towards the other way, and I'm stretching like this, and I turn back around, and he's standing right there. And it's thick honeysuckle. I had trimmed one lane through there. I basically went in there in the rain and threw a stand up. I'm only like 12 feet off the ground, up on kind of a bluff where he has to come through here. And he just pegs me, and no way to get my bow up. I did get drawn, and he never, ever, ever came through that spot again. Not one time. Never. Yeah. It was done. And so he would be on the school. So super long story, kind of short. In the meantime, I won't say their names, but a neighbor had a lease on the other side of town where this farm was. Well, I didn't even really know the people at the time, but they had a trespasser and they were out of state, had messaged the property owner and asked if they knew who this trespasser was, the picture. And so she said to ask me, because I knew a lot of people. Well, I kind of formed a little relationship with these out of state hunters that were across the farm from my other place. And I had never seen the deer over there at this point. And I would see it daily back here on the school. Like I could walk up on it. It was deaf. It had a limp, super old. Well, the more we got to talking, they knew this deer and they hadn't seen it for like 3 years. And they assumed it was gone. They had gotten one picture that was bad that they thought maybe was it. And we started comparing notes and stuff. And they're like, I think that's this deer they called Big John. And so we ended up looking at it, and very, very unique rack. I mean, it looks like Medusa. I don't know if I showed you a picture of it.
Yeah, it's clicking with me as you're telling me the story.
So it had a double white throat patch, and in the second throat patch, it had a big brown U that went up in it, and really unique brows and stuff. Well, this deer, we think that it had arthritis in its knees so bad, it was really hilly terrain over on that side of town, and it moved over here because it was easier to get around.
Right.
And so it would have been like 8 or 9 years old. At one point, that deer scored like 212 or something like that. Yeah. Many, many sheds off of it. So I was trying to find the sheds that year. I mean, I was out on the nature trail every day.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure.
Yeah. I got stuck on the other side of the railroad tracks one time during the school day, and I had to call my coworkers and say, hey, can somebody cover my class? And they're like, my God, Brent, what is that noise? I'm like, it's train. So I search everywhere for these sheds, and I knew where he was spending a lot of time. And I mean, I have thousands of pictures of him from that year. And finally, I had one spot kind of in the center of town between the two places. It was like a 6-acre patch of woods, and my grandpa owned it at one point. Okay. And so I got permission to go walk it. And I thought that's where they got to be, those sheds. So I go in there and I walk the whole thing. I don't see it. This is on my lunch hour. I go do everything on my lunch hour all the time.
I don't blame you. I used to do
especially
the same
when I have
way.
Places where I can hunt within minutes of here.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I take a picture before I go back to school of this old fence post. It was a concrete fence post. And I said, I made some kind of post on Facebook that said something like, the old timers did it right. Somebody, maybe my grandpa, put that fence post up there, and it still stands and looks the way it did 80 years ago, or something like that. Just made a post about it. Yeah. I get back to school, and I'm looking at that post, and I'm looking in the picture, and in the background, I see something white laying behind the fence post. And I'm like, man, no way are those antlers. So I send it to a few people. I sent it to the guys that were out of state, and they're like, dude, if that's those antlers, that's the craziest story ever.
Yeah.
So after school, I go down there, and it was evening, and I didn't want to park where I could be seen or anything, and so I park at this neighbor's house. I have rubber boots, camo coat on, and binoculars, walking through town. And I go up into this, and I walk the whole thing, run into a tenant that I had just evicted, riding a bike through this woods, which was super odd. So a buddy of mine that's a cop, he messaged me and said, well, did you find him? And I said, no. Went right to that fence post, and standing, how the sun can be, looking at the fence post, I could not see him from the angle where I took the picture. So I made a big circle through it. I'm coming back. It's dark, like dark. And I look through there, and I can see, at night, like right before dark, those antlers kind of glow, and it's kind of rainy, and I see both sides of them right there, and pick both sides up. So, we 10 years of notes. We should get the other guys on sometime and put the whole story together, because it is pretty incredible. All the different things that we had with that deer. So then I watched him the next year. He got a little smaller the next year. And then he got hit by a car and died.
That's terrible,
hit
man.
by a car. Yeah. So that's how it ended. That's not the way we really want a story like that to end.
No.
But I was obsessed. I mean, I had 2 or 3 other tiny little parcels around the area that I could hunt. And I gave a 160-inch 8-pointer on my side of the farm. I never hunted it because I was just obsessed with trying to get on this deer, and they were boring sits. I'd go in there and sit, and I mean 10 hunts and I wouldn't see a deer.
Right.
It was just
But you knew,
sometime that deer is going to come through here.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
and so that was part of it with, people and worrying about telling the story that, anybody tries to hunt that area super hard, A, it's going to be ruined. You can't hunt it super hard. But B, it just, it was one of
It's
those
a
deals. It was in
situational.
there, and it, they're now that 160-inch 8-pointer, I did end up killing in the same spot that I had him. The next year is 180-inch, which is a good story too. But there has not been a deer in there since over 125 inches. I've never hunted it for 2-3 years. So
it really brings me back to, like, I used to suburban hunt in Maryland where I grew up at.
Yeah.
And man, like some of the bucks that I would chase in there, I killed one that I had 3 years of history with.
Yeah.
And it was just so special. It wasn't a huge rack deer at all, but like they just get you like that. And I don't know. I love building history with one specific deer. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah. I mean, I have no desire to go sit and just, and I used to hunt that way. I think everybody's at a different path or a different point in their hunting journey, that which there's no wrong way of any of it. But for me right now, going and sitting, I could probably be more successful and kill more deer and probably maybe just as big of deer. But when you choose to hunt a specific buck, you kind of take your odds down because you're focusing on that one deer. You know what I mean? As opposed to sitting in a pinch point that's just great during the rut, and the potential for multiple big deer could be there. But
yeah, it can get you in trouble sometimes too. I mean, you just got to be okay with eating that tag. That's pretty much how it went for me this season. Like, but I had what? It was really interesting though. I had more big buck encounters than I ever have, and honestly, like, I had so much fun, even though I didn't kill that deer. Like, it was just cat and mouse with me and him, and I had a blast doing it, and I learned a ton too. So it's just, what do you want to take away from your seasons? But man, I know, for a lot of guys probably don't realize how many big deer you've killed where you live at. I mean, like, how many of them have you had history like that with? I mean, is it a lot?
So
of times
I was thinking about that. Obviously, when I hunted the Grigsby back from when I was 7 to 17, I think when I was 17 was the first time I killed a deer that I really knew. I had maybe seen these deer, but back then I just hunted a good area, and I would just, hunt
trail
topography
cameras
and
really changed a lot of things.
Like 100% they have. But,
they really have.
When I was a junior in high school, the spring before, so I would have been a sophomore, I was out shed hunting, and I jumped this. I called it the Flyer 8, and he was just a big mainframe 8 with double flyers coming off of it. And I remember jumping him, and I was on my 4-wheeler, and I just kept like driving behind him, hoping they fell off. It was like end of March,
Yeah.
And the next year, I knew where that deer had been bedded, and so I saw it several times that season, and then tried to find his antlers. Never did. The following year, I sat that general area, trying to kill that deer, and I ended up killing it. I could get about 25 minutes in before school every day. So I'd go sit in the stand, and I shot it before school one morning. And I still remember, you want to tell somebody when that happens. It was a bow kill, 165-inch 8-pointer, bow kill as a junior in high school. And so I'm pumped, and so I get down. There's no phones. I didn't have anybody I could call. So I'm leaving, and the road workers are working on a bridge. And I remember just jumping out. And I'm like, I shot this huge deer, and it's dead. And I found it, and I knew the deer. And they're all looking at me like, what? So I go to school, and I had shop my first hour. I had that same teacher for the first 3 hours. And he goes, Davis, take somebody and go get your deer, but you better be back by third hour. Don't get me in trouble. And we never came back. We went and got the deer, but that was the first one that I picked and really kind of focused on.
That's
and
awesome.
I think back probably 10 years ago is when I really started just focusing on one deer specifically. It was, I took a break from hunting for like 7 or 8 years. I never hardly hunted. I definitely didn't kill a buck. Between having kids, and we hunted the Grigsby, which was phenomenal. Everything, the opportunities we had, people get mad that big money comes in and takes things. It's hard to fault somebody for doing well in life. And we had a lot of good years with it. It still sucks. But I was going to stay on and guide for the Grigsby. They were going to do more of a outfitter type thing. And, again, nothing against how they handled it. They didn't do me wrong. I helped them hang the stands, and I was going to still be able to hunt off times when clients weren't there, it
Right.
wasn't the same. Seeing all that
Yeah.
big money come in, it just kind of ruined it for me. My dad was a dentist. He was there cleaning windows in the lodge, and he goes, I haven't cleaned a window in my own house in 35 years. And so he went and bought a farm. I lasted about another 2 or 3 weeks, and finally I quit, and it just kind of
Yeah.
soured things for me, like
Uh-huh.
I just
Gave you a
seeing the
bad
money.
taste.
Yeah, it gave me a bad taste.
Yeah.
I was having kids and getting married, and my dad bought a farm, and that was always my dream, was to have a farm.
Mhm.
And I didn't hardly hunt it at all. It wasn't great. It was in a good area, but there wasn't big deer there. And you go from hunting huge deer to not having deer. And, I lost my drive for it for quite a while. And then I got into habitat management, planting trees, doing that kind of stuff, and still wasn't hunting. But as soon as I could see that transition of the habitat improving and the
Mhm.
deer moving in, the first big deer that showed up there, I called him Gorg. And, that was when I got back to picking a single deer. That was really when trail cameras were out, I started using those to my advantage, and really probably, that was a little longer than 10 years ago, 12, 13 years ago. But that's when that Gorg deer, seeing that he moved in there and was using these things that I was doing. I've planted like 50,000 trees on our farm. We've taken
Yeah.
like 35 acres of ag out and put in, various CRP programs. And, we've done all of it, and it's really rewarding. And when you see those animals start using that, it really got me back to being passionate about picking a specific deer again. So,
Yeah. That's awesome, man. And it's really unfortunate, it happens to a ton of people out there, like as far as losing property to either lease prices, even if the land doesn't sell. And, where I live here, well, really, let's just kick back where I grew up at. If moving here to Kentucky, part of the reason was because I knew I could actually probably be able to hunt farms and not have to pay for them or,
Right.
get permission somehow. And I've done that. But man, like even if you have permission here, it can get ruined in,
Absolutely.
in a season.
Well, just like that piece that was back here. Now they took a bridge out where the deer traveled through the old railroad. So that really changed movement back here. But then the other thing was, people heard the following year, which is another really good story on a deer that I had a lot of history with, the 160-inch 8 that I, didn't hunt that year, turned into a 180-inch 10, and I killed him 2 years later. But after I did that, people heard where it was at. People started wanting to go in there and hunt it. Yep. And, all of a sudden, it changed it, and so, I still have permission to go there. Some other people have gotten permission too. It just, you got to take that with a grain of salt with permission pieces though. Right. I absolutely, if somebody else is going to be there, it sounds selfish, I'm not going to hunt it.
I feel the same way, man. It's kind of a catch-22 if you're not paying for the property. Like, what are you supposed to do?
Yep.
And I think it's one thing that you don't hear talked about much, but realistically, there's, some farmers out there are some of the worst things for a deer herd because they're just like, oh yeah, you can go hunt. Oh, kill everything.
Kill them all.
And it's like, man, like you really, if you asked my opinion about your property, I'd say it's perfectly managed for buck to doe ratio. Yeah. There's plenty of times I sit out here and I don't even see a deer. So absolutely. I don't know. And I'm in the same dilemma, or maybe I'm not in the same dilemma, but I'm at that point now where it's like I'm really trying to just obtain more and more spots because I know it's like you kill a couple big deer, bam, all right, that's gone. Somebody, small town living, everybody talks. Oh, did you hear this? Did you hear? It's like, God, and if you have a social media, like you can't. I don't know. I mean,
and I when I shot that deer over here, the Brutus deer, I debated trying to get in there and get it out, without the landowner knowing, and and he wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have done it so he didn't know I killed it. But he doesn't know, like, hey, let's keep this quiet. It would have been everywhere.
Yeah.
But
And
you know
that's
what? At
usually
that
how it
point,
goes.
I'm not
Yeah.
going to do that. You know, like I told Dad,
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to tell him I'm going to go back there. I shot this deer, and I got to take an awesome buck out of it. And if that's the
Yeah.
only one I killed, it's the only one
And
I
I
killed. I
mean,
got
to
lots of
me,
spots, but
it's a respect thing too. It's like, hey,
yeah,
thank you. Like,
yep,
honestly, thank you so much for letting
yep,
me hunt here.
yep.
But
And
then
you know,
you just shoot yourself in the foot, like
yep,
literally.
yep. I mean, it does. And I've lost, I mean, so many permission pieces, but that's 100. If you want to kill big deer, you have to have lots of pieces. I own 2 farms. Our family owns 125 acres, and I own a 40 acre. I lease one, a 20 acre, and then I probably have 12 more spots that are all permission pieces. I have killed, of my 4 booners, I've killed all 3 on permission pieces. I've killed multiple 160s that, I mean, I've killed very rarely if I kill deer on my own farm. It's those permission pieces that, you know, off the wall places that are good for the first year or two, and then
Yep.
something ruins them. It could be, you know, it's a fence row in the middle of nowhere. I had a deer, a mega deer, worst deer of my life, that this lady that watches my Facebook, little old lady, she would not like, if she listens to this and I call her a little old lady, she's gonna whoop me. But I had taught her kids, and they're grown now, but she said, hey, I have a big deer behind my house. You should come see if you can get pictures of it. And I'm like, yeah, everybody has a picture of a big deer. You know,
Yeah,
everybody says they have a big deer.
Everyone, yeah.
So,
from a non-hunter, a big deer
right.
could be a
So
120.
I pull up her property, and I mean, it literally is a 8-acre strip of trees that goes through the middle of a ag field and just wide open all around, like
Okay.
everywhere, wide
Yeah.
open ag fields. And I'm like, man, there's not big deer in there. There's just no way. But I go in, I put a camera up, and I let it soak for like a month. And my son and I went on a velvet cruise, and we're out there about a week before I pulled the card. And he goes, Dad, there's a giant out there in that bean field. And I'm like, that is not a deer. It looked like a big bunch of weeds. And he stands up, and I mean, it's 180
Yeah.
plus, clean, typical, mega heavy. His name was Mega, is what we call
Yeah.
him.
You guys have
And
so much mass on the bucks out there.
yeah,
I'm so jealous.
no, they eat well. So so I go in and pull that card. The very first picture on that first card was this deer staring in the camera like this, just a mega. And so it was pouring rain that day. I left, went home, got stands, came back in the rain. There's a fence row, so it's a strip of trees like this, and then it makes a T, like a hedgerow.
Mhm.
And you know, you could hunt it with any northwest or northeast. If I get on, there's a gap in the center of the T, like at the top. So I had to stand on each end of it for whatever wind. It was the most patternable deer I've ever seen in my life. I could go out and glass from a cornfield, and it bedded on the end of the T, like the post, like on the very end. It would bed down there, and I could watch it in its bed. If the wind was blowing from the west every day, wind was blowing anything out of the west, it came down the east side of the woods to out to the bean field. And this is early season, you know, but all summer it did that. And then the opposite, when the wind was blowing out of the east, it'd come down the west side. And so I told my wife, I was like, that deer's dead. I have to have some sort of north in the wind though.
Mhm.
And I never even put one on the south end. I wasn't messing with it. I mean, I thought, and it's not early, you don't get a north wind very often here.
Right.
And so October 1st comes, and it was going to be like a straight south wind that would blow right into the cover. Well, partway through the day, it shifts, and it's more west northwest. And my kid had a cross country meet. I mean, my wife works 30 minutes away, and I call her. I'm like, honey, I'm going to shoot that deer. Everything's right. And she was not happy. I went out there, and right before dark, here he comes, right down the edge like he's supposed to. And when I hung that stand in the rain, I call it buck brush, but just weeds on the edge of the field were a lot taller than they looked when I hung the stand. I never even walked over to where I was going to shoot. And all I could see is the top of his back and his head coming through there. And 22 yards I shot, and the Luminaki just see go like this and just dropped. And
oh man,
he walked out of my life. So yeah, but that is a prime example of a middle of nowhere spot that, you know, that deer I've rarely got pictures of him there ever again, but it was good for that one hunt. And then another person saw my truck parked there, knew what, you know, I'm not going to they know that I hunt good deer typically. So they get permission literally to put in the bean field that I would walk through on another farmer to get to this farm. No trees on it. They pull a box blind within 10 yards of my stand and park it right there. And the spot was done.
Right.
I mean, there's still big deer go through there, but it's those kind of things. You have to have multiple places like that if you want to be able to continue to find big deer.
Fly under the radar. It's so hard. I'm sure, you're in a small town, right?
Yeah.
Am I wrong in saying that?
Yeah, no, very small.
Yeah. So it's like, what do you do? I feel like everybody, I mean, heck, like one of my buddies texted me today. He's like, what do you need a ladder for? I'm like, dude, do you just stalk me? Like, I swear to God, I'm like, if farming doesn't work out for you, be a private investigator, right? Because he's always creeping on me, and I'm like, oh, nice jacket, faggot.
Right.
Like, what is up with this guy? Yeah, but that's small town life, man. Everybody sees you, even when you don't think anybody's looking. Somebody's looking, and
but
so what have you really done to kind of? Is that your solution to it? It's just constantly,
I'm going to constantly, every time somebody tells me they see a good deer somewhere and I can hunt there, I'm going to go put a camera. I mean, I got 130 trail cameras right now, and I put them up everywhere, and people are like, that's crazy. Like, how do you manage that? There's no way I'd ever do that. And like, it is worth it when, I own 2 farms. There's zero possibility that both of those farms are going to have a shooter deer for me to hunt every single year.
Absolutely.
It's just not realistic. And I mean, I've had some cameras in just ridiculous spots that deer have shown up, and are there. That lady, and usually if you make a good relationship with somebody, it's going to spread to other people. Her mom had a farm that is probably my best farm right now, minus last year. Got kind of ruined by dogs, but she said, hey, my mom has a really cool pasture, and I like doing the habitat stuff. And so she asked if I'd come over and look at the habitat and try to do an old field conversion on her cool season pasture. So I went over there and immediately start seeing these giant rubs everywhere. And I'm like, hey, does your mom allow hunting? And she's like, there's no way my mom's going to let you hunt. And so I'm there meeting with her, and I say, would you let me put up trail cameras? And I legit did not intend to hunt it, but I was like, let's see what's back here. And she's a widowed lady and lives in the middle of nowhere. And so she was all about that. Well, I get giants on there, and so it took me 2 years, but finally I built that trust. And she's like, you know what, if you want to hunt, go ahead and hunt. And I've been hunting it ever since, and
that's awesome.
And I think if you're good to people and you don't go in, just trying to go straight at getting permission to hunt, you build a relationship and see the trust is there. And, I think that's a good angle to
just
to
letting people know that you're genuine and, you're not some dirtbag that's just going to show up and shoot something.
That could bite you in the butt too,
Yeah, so, you're right. Yeah. I'm a handyman around here. So it's like, it's a catch-22. Everybody's like, oh, do you offer services and work? I'm like, no, not really. Like, it's kind of the last thing that I mention, unless it's
and I've gotten myself into that on that exact property is I do a lot of work for. It's stuff I like to do, but I'm buying chemical, to spray the pasture. I'm burning. I'm, cutting trails, and it does add up, but that's the benefit of being a summer teacher and, summer
and I really do. I enjoy the, habitat stuff too, man. I'm very fortunate. Yeah. Like I have 25 acres, so it's not a ton, but I try to every year just do something, semi-major to help improve it. And it's been a really fun growth factor, I guess, watching all these deer. I learned the hard way that I need to actually, start feeding deer more, which I'm not really a big fan of, but I think that's the one key factor to actually hold the deer on my property versus just letting them slide
all
through.
Depends what your habitat is lacking, whether they're lacking food and the one property mine is lacking cover. It was a mowed cool season pasture and it was a great deer funnel, but it just doesn't hold a deer. They go through there in the rut, but so we've done plum thickets, hazelnut thickets, switchgrass. We've done about everything you can do on that property.
That's awesome. So, I'll reach out to you about that stuff.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, so, you're on the Whitetail Addictions crew. Am I right? Okay. So
correct. Yep.
How can you explain to me how you and Justin and Heath all met, right? Did you meet them both at the same time?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to care that I say this. They lease a farm near me,
Okay.
and so that's how we started talking. And it's kind of funny the way that I even before I was on addictions, I've always said I'm a lone wolf. Like I'm friends with everybody. I get along with everybody, but I have
Yeah.
no really close friends. I'm not a very good friend because I'm always going and doing something. I'm always on the go. I'm not very accountable as far as like, hey, can you come over and I don't drink anymore. I quit drinking 12 years ago. So I'm not a great friend. I'll do anything for you, but I'm not one that's going to meet every Friday night or Saturday and play cards and you know.
Yeah.
But they they had a trespasser, and so they messaged me to see if I knew the person, and we kind of just started talking. And it's funny because hunters are so secretive and not wanting to share things,
Mm-hmm.
which on one hand I get, but on the other hand, if you want to be able to kill deer and you really trust your neighbor, you can kill deer better if you share things. And I know at first, like Justin and I's relationship, we talked a lot, and just I could tell he was passionate, and you know he could tell I was passionate, and we kind of started sharing some pictures and stuff of deer. And I think Heath was a little more hesitant of it at
Like,
first.
nope, don't do that. Don't
Yeah,
talk to him.
yeah,
Yeah.
which I get that as well. I mean,
Yeah.
there's certain neighbors that I share with, and there's certain that I don't.
Right.
But we really kind of hit it off, and I enjoyed their friendship. I had no intentions whatsoever of being on addictions. In fact, I told them that. Like, I don't want you to think that I'm using you guys to try to get on the show or get free
Right.
gear. And I said that for like 3 years or maybe longer, that I had no intentions of that whatsoever. I did enjoy their friendship. Justin, they both stay at my house when they come out all the time. And hunters are the best people. They really are. Like I've
Yeah.
made so many friendships of true friendships that, like we're not hanging out all the time, but if I called either one of them and I needed them, they would
Yeah.
be here in a heartbeat. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it's they live a long ways away, but we talk all the time, and
Mhm.
so it's really grown into a good friendship, and they're two of my best friends.
That's one of my favorite things about like doing this podcast, because I feel like I can relate a lot to like what you had said.
Yeah.
It's like, you're such a busy guy, and it's like, but you've got all these like great connections and great friends that
Yeah.
might not even live near you. I feel like
Yeah.
nowadays for me, a lot of my friends live all over the place, like
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, all these different
Yeah.
areas. And it's kind of cool with me moving out this way, and now I'm kind of growing more and more relationships from doing
Yeah.
podcasts, and it's like
Well, and
we
when
all
you're
share the yeah,
like-minded friends with people that do the same thing, they get it. Like, I mean,
right,
I went to college to wrestle and realized that, hey, I set my own schedule. I can deer hunt every day if I set my classes 10 to 2. I didn't want to hang out with other people because I wanted to be deer hunting. Deer
yeah,
hunters get that.
yeah,
Like they know during this time of year, I'm not going to hear from Brent very often unless it's sharing
no,
pictures. You know what I mean? And
absolutely,
and and that's kind of the perfect type of friend. It's
right,
that
yeah, or
you're
like,
like-minded,
well, and it's great
and
when
I
they
can,
come out. You guys get to hang out together, and
yeah.
I
And
asked
I
that because
pick on them.
I
I pick on them
figured.
and bully them every time they're here. They stay in the Brokebuck Mountain Suite in my house, and they've had my kids will put like fake blow up dolls in their beds that look like people, like to scare them, and masks in their bed. That, I mean, they're like family friends. They really are. So
Oh, that's
it's been
awesome.
cool.
That's awesome. Yeah,
But
I know. I mean, I've met you a few times at the addictions get-togethers and stuff, and I always enjoyed talking with you, man.
yeah,
You're usually in a crowd, and we're all having some good laughs. So
yeah,
now, like, let's get into the next generation. I know I wanted to kind of touch on this with you. Being a dad, and you've got kids in various ages.
yeah.
How are you? Obviously, being a teacher, I'm sure it just probably comes natural to you. But I mean, maybe give us some ways that you think, from your perspective, how some of these younger guys, can kind of help get their kids in the outdoors and involved. And
Well, I mean, obviously, I wouldn't be a teacher, an elementary teacher for 15 years, and then now a middle school teacher for so many years if I didn't enjoy kids. But as far as my own kids, like it's really a double-edged sword for me because it was such a big part of my life as a child, being in the outdoors. And I think people get frustrated all the time with, oh, when I was a kid, I did this, and you guys are just sitting on these tablets, which all of that is true, but it's a different world also. So, with my kids, I have not pushed them or forced them to try to be involved in hunting. They all go. I had 3 brothers. They didn't hunt at all. I mean, my oldest one hunted. Everybody but my younger brother killed a couple deer, but I was the only one passionate about it. So my kids love to be outside, but I don't force them to do it. I think if you're going to take an animal's life, you have to want to do it. My one son was wanting to shoot a deer, and my other one had already killed a deer at his age, at Brody's age, but Brody wanted to do it because he wanted to please me. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And I told my wife, I said, I'm not taking him, like he's not wanting to do it for the right reason. So my oldest
how
one,
old was he then?
8.
Okay.
8. And he just killed a deer this last year. Was his first deer that he killed.
Okay.
The other thing that's hard with that is I've got some pretty good spots, and, whether you put your kid on a good deer or not,
Yeah. That's a very good statement. I'm glad you brought that up.
I will go to my deathbed saying it's not going to matter either way. I get what everybody says. You're going to ruin them for hunting and everything else. But what kind of dad am I? My son Bryce, now I put him on the deer. I did. Shot a 164-inch 10-pointer we called Curly. But what kind of dad am I if I'm sitting in a deer stand and that deer comes out? No, you can't shoot that son. He's too big. Come on. No, how are you going to do that?
I get it.
And he has helped me put in food plots. He was 12 or 13 when he shot it. Helped me, and it was with a gun. Helped me put in food plots. He's out there. He listens to me talking. He knows we had 3 days of youth season, and the first night, this deer was coming to a scrape every single night on this food plot. And the wind wasn't right the first 2 nights. And he was so mad at me. I said, buddy, we're going to sit over here and we're just going to watch and see if he does it. And he's like, Dad, we have to go in there and kill that deer. Like, we have to go in there. He's coming every night. And I'm like, Sunday, the wind's going to be right. We'll wait till Sunday. So he's hearing all of these things and learning and absorbing the things I'm saying. I'm telling him where they're bedding. I'm telling him why they're moving there. So Sunday comes, it's legit a tornado warning. And my wife is like, you are not taking our son out there sitting in a stupid box blind in a tornado. Yeah. And
yes, we are. We're going to kill
We have a video of Bryce wearing an Illinois football helmet, and I had on like an Army helmet, and we're in Casey's getting snacks, and they're like, what are you doing? Oh, we're going to go hunt. And I said, Bryce, as soon as that rain stops, that deer's going to hit that scrape in daylight. Wind's perfect. This is why we waited. So my mind is, my dad taught me how to hunt and taught me a lot, but like, nothing like that.
Absolutely.
Like he is getting things that puts him years ahead of where I was at. Now, when he starts doing it on his own, he's going to have to cut his teeth and make a lot of mistakes when he tries to do those things that I'm teaching him. But it's like he's getting the cheat code for a lot of stuff that he's going to get to try out just because he has that background knowledge. I think that's a plus.
Absolutely.
So, and sure enough, that we get in that blind, the rain stops, and I'm telling them all this stuff, and they always look at me like, Dad, you
sure,
always
Dad.
Say, this is the day. And that freaking deer comes out exactly within 5 minutes of the rain stopping. And I'm always hunting with my kids. I'm like, any minute now, the deer are going to start moving, and they're looking at me like, you say that every time.
Yeah.
Rain stops, 5 minutes later, that deer comes in, and he shoots it. It was the best memory we could ever have, because it was, Dad, that happened just like you said. He came out of that bedding area down there.
You're
like that. That's like, who am I though to like not set him up like that? Like I get what people say, but he is. Now he's a freshman in high school, super busy, super athletic, good athlete. He's not going to be able to hunt very much more for the next 8 years, probably between college or high school and college and playing sports. But he's got that seed planted that he's got a taste of it enough that it's exciting, and he was successful. My opinion, he's going to come back when he has time.
Yes, sir.
And that's my take on it. Like, maybe I shouldn't put him on a huge deer. Now, I don't always try to put him on the biggest deer, but if the big deer comes out, shoot the thing.
Well, I mean, in your defense, I feel like it's a lot more personal when you have him out there working the soil and teaching him things. And it's like that, to me, like, whatever, man, like, hey, he's hunting this farm just like I am, like, and it's your kid, and you've killed plenty of big deer, man. I mean, and that's how I look at it now.
Well, and for me, that I got to do everything but pull the trigger, and I got to see my kid do it and put joy on his face.
Absolutely.
Like, that is like, that's a no-brainer to me. I don't regret that in any way, shape, or form. No. And the last year, his mom went with him, and I sat with my other son, and somebody's looking in my window, the janitor. Hey, yeah, I'm talking to myself. Okay, so they think I'm nuts anyway. Believe me, they think I'm nuts. I got all kinds of, never mind. Okay, so this year, Bryce goes, and he is a 15-year-old now. He wants to kill a big deer, but he would 100% shoot a small deer. I told him year he has to he can't hunt with a crossbow anymore until he shoots a deer with his compound bow. Once he shoots a deer with his compound bow, I don't care if it's a button buck, or a doe. If you can kill a deer with your compound, you don't have a lot of time, I'll let you go shoot the crossbow again. But you got to kill it, so, and he gets super excited trying to shoot one with a compound, he gets nervous and, so he's doing all that. But he's with his mom during youth gun season, sitting in a stand, and they're messaging me, and I can tell they're nervous about what they should shoot and what they shouldn't shoot. Dad, this deer the deer that we call, Newton was a deer that we had in there, and it was a great young 10-point. And so then I'm telling them characteristics, and finally I'm like, this is stupid. I'm like, listen, if you see it, it gets you excited, shoot the damn thing.
Right.
That's why we're here. You don't have to overanalyze it. If you're excited, you got your mom with you, don't worry about it. Kill it, And that's what happened. And he shot a deer that would be a giant someday. But it was a awesome experience. He got to do it with his mom in the stand with him, and the whole family was out there. You know what? I want to kill that deer in the future maybe, but that is better, and that's kind of what it's all about. If I start putting too many stipulations on my kids, or they start figuring out, hey, my dad's put me in a gar hole so I don't shoot a big deer, what kind of dad am I?
Absolutely,
so,
man. It takes me back to a really cool, I don't know if it's a quote per se from Greg Litzinger, but he says, focus on memories, not inches. And I love that. That's obviously, you and I can both relate. It's we want to kill giants. But, I'm at that point as a father. It's with my kid, prime example, last weekend was youth turkey season. And I have the same mentality. I don't want to push her. Right. But I asked her, I'm like, honey, would you like to try to shoot the shotgun? I mean, I can put it in a tripod. And she's like, well, let's try the, I was like, let's try my AR. I have a 300 blackout that doesn't kick hardly at all.
Used for the,
Yeah. And I have a suppressor too on it. So it's I put a real light load, and I'm like, this will be perfect. And it's got a red dot, just like the shotgun. So I'm like, okay, well, man, she didn't like the recoil from that. And I'm like, it's fine. I'm like, I'm not going to push you. I was like, hey, it's all good. And whatever, whenever she's ready, I didn't take a deer till I was 12. I mean, it was just, it is what it is. Everybody's got,
they're out there with me, doing things in the outdoors.
Yeah.
I teach 80 kids every year. And I probably could count on one hand how many, before we go out in the woods, how many have been in the woods, and we're in a rural town.
Not even that. I'll stop you there. You're teaching them how to scout too, which is so awesome. I love that.
But 90% of them have never been in the forest. They've never been in the woods. I'm like, what do you mean?
That's crazy.
Oh, they've been in their yard. They have no background knowledge whatsoever.
Is it all just ag around you, or
no? There's a lot of there's a state park in our town. There's a but I shouldn't say on one hand, but very few have any background knowledge in the outdoors. Now, when I first started teaching 20 years ago, they were all little rednecks. In fact, I taught third grade my first year, and I told a bunch of hillbillies, let's go. And they're like, why are you calling us hillbillies? And I said, all right, everybody go get your coat, put them on, and come back in and sit down. And they're like, what? And I'm like, just do it. And they put their coat on, and they come back in, they sit down. I'm like, all right, now stand up if you got Carhartt or camouflage on. 99% of them stood up. I said, sit down, hillbillies, sit down.
Awesome.
But it's changed. The demographics have changed of what is here. There's not, everybody was a farm family. Now big
Well,
farms have bought everything.
I'm sure.
And
Have you been to Marion? Is that like?
yeah,
I
yep,
mean,
it's
that place
a ways.
kind of surprised me. Yeah,
Yep,
like we went through there when I went scouting, and I was like,
yep,
the bartender, like it was at nighttime, and we were just cruising,
yeah,
and I was like, let's just go get like a burger and a beer, and
yeah.
we walk in there, and she's like, this is actually kind of a rough area, and I'm like, what? Really? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and I had no idea.
Well, I mean, there's so many. I mean, I really, this class this year, the number of them that haven't been in the woods is more than ever. Uh, and they just soak it in. They're like, "What do you mean we're going to go out there and like walk through the creek? Like we're going to
Uh-huh.
get dirty?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, don't wear Crocs. You're going to get muddy." You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They just love it. And
Right.
I've had numerous kids. One girl I had was the girliest girl you've ever met, and I got to know her dad was a federal marshal. And he comes up to me after she was in Bryce's class in 5th grade,
Hmm.
and so the next year he calls me, he goes, "Brent, I need advice on getting in a crossbow." And I'm like, what do you want to get a crossbow for? He goes, "She's the most girly girl on the planet, wants jewelry and makeup for Christmas. This year she wants a damn crossbow because you've talked about deer hunting so much, she wants to be a deer hunter." And he goes, "And then
That's
I got to
awesome.
find out somewhere to take her to kill a deer." So it was during COVID, and I'm like,
Yeah, that's awesome.
we'll get her a deer, And so we hunted that winter, and it was during COVID, and we just could not get on anything. Like it was
Really?
just every time we'd go, I don't have many late season places, and it was like mid-December when we started,
Hmm.
and we couldn't even kill a deer. The only thing we got was COVID. We sat in a box blind together. He called me and said, "Hey, Brent, I think maybe you might want to get tested. I tested positive for COVID." And I'm like, "Well, we sat in a sealed blind,
Yeah.
right next to each other. I got COVID." So
Yeah.
then the following year, she did end up getting her first deer
That's
on our
cool.
farm with
That's
me
awesome,
and her
man.
dad. So I've done that with lots of students that have gone out and got their first deer and stuff, and like that's cool to see for me that they may never have that opportunity.
Yeah, man.
You know,
That is literally passing it on right there. You
and
know?
it's ridiculous because they're always like, "Well, you got these places to go. We don't have anywhere to go." I'm like, even just walking in the woods, I'm like, "Listen, this nature trail right here, you can come here anytime you want and walk to school. You can
Right.
go to New Salem, the state park that's 1,000 acres. You can go to Side M that's 12 miles away. That's 15,000 acres. Like
Hmm.
you have all these opportunities, but they don't even know about it.
Right.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, man. That's pretty cool. I mean, as far as, I guess we're getting near the end of this one. There's usually a couple questions I like to ask a lot of our guests. And for me, I always have learned a lot, more from failures than successes.
100%.
Why don't you give us like maybe if you can think of one? I know it's like off the hip, but
Yep.
what's one of your biggest failures that maybe had taught you the most in your hunting career?
I still struggle with being aggressive. As far as, and it cost me this year, but usually every year. Justin and Heath always give me a hard time about get in there and kill it. Quit overthinking it. They tell me I overthink everything. Kind of pisses me off, little jerks. But a part of it is when you have a small farm, 30 acres, you can't just dive in there and get super aggressive. I get that.
Yeah.
I get that tactic, and I can do that maybe on 150 acres,
Hmm.
which is still kind of small for that. But you bump a deer on a small piece with little cover, you may not see that deer for 3 weeks again.
Right.
So I sit back too much. I did. I had a deer daylighting, a huge deer daylighting this year that, they kept saying, just go in there and kill it. Well, between being a dad and having too much
Yeah.
going on, it daylighted multiple times a day, every day for 10 days straight. And I finally was able to go in and hunt it. And then I never saw it again after I hunted it. Didn't kill it. But, I think setting back too much, other failures, my biggest frustrations is target panic. I don't know if that
Okay.
is something that I really learned from, but I struggled with around the same time I quit hunting. I struggle with target panic real bad. It's not buck fever. I got calm nerves when a big deer comes out. It's I can't slow that punch
It's
down.
hard. It's kind of hard to like put your pin and bury it on a deer.
Yep.
You have a hard time.
And
Yeah.
that's only, it went away because I took such a
Now,
long break, and I was good for 2 years.
Uh-huh.
And then this last year it started creeping back in a little bit.
What kind of release are you using?
Right now it's a Stan thumb release.
A thumb? Okay, good.
Not the clickers, but
now, like, have you switched because of that, or did you always shoot?
Yeah,
that?
that's initially I switched to change it up, and I need to do something like that again. I think, I do a lot of shooting, and I got to go back to blind bailing in my garage, just going through the whole mental process of it.
Yeah, that's really what helped me shake it, man. If I'm being honest with you, and I don't know, like I had such a hard time with that for a whole season, 1 year, and it really helped me out.
Yeah,
just kind of getting that natural, like using the back tension, if you want to call it that.
And I think that I shoot 83 pounds. I like a heavy bow.
Damn.
And
well, you are a big guy.
That can make. I just hold it. I hold steadier with I keep going back to my old Strother bow that I drove over with my truck this year that still shoots.
Nice.
With low let off and a heavy pull, I can just hold so much stiffer. Like I'm locked in so much better, and I've always shot that way. I've just shot a lot of poundage, but I think that leads to punching more. You're holding all that weight and you're trying to get back tension, but you're also a really fast arrow. So if you're on typically and you get it off there quick enough, until you really start punching, it's going to go pretty close to where you want it. But it is a tough thing to beat. And I think if you shoot a lot, sometimes I get myself in trouble. Like I shoot too much. I shoot so much that I start getting tired and I start going away from I go away from my basics, and I'm just out there to shoot arrows, not to go through the correct motions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I find that if I shoot too much, I develop more bad habits. So
it's weird shooting little dots and like what it can do with your brain.
Absolutely.
My cure to it, to be honest with you, man, that I learned, I shot paper all winter long 1 year, and I just really understood the whole principle of micro focusing on one area and then and not even thinking about it and just pulling that arm back, and it just breaks by itself.
See, now another thing with that 80-pound bow that I have, it has limb stops, so it's a dead wall, and I shoot a dead wall better than I do a lot of these newer bows. Like my Hoyt,
it's spongy.
My Hoyt is spongy, and I pull like this, and I torque the heck out of it. Like I shoot paper in my garage all the time too, and I'm constantly trying to tune my bow and mess with it. It's me. I mean, I'm torquing the bow because I'm trying to pull through it too much. But
tis the season for working through all that kind of stuff right now.
And I enjoy doing that. I started doing all that on my own last year. Bought all the press and all that. But I think going back to the thing that you said as far as something that made you a better hunter. I just had it in my head, and now I think I forgot it. I don't know.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to throw you off.
No, I think that I think the biggest thing to be a successful hunter that I have found, and it's common ground with all really good hunters, is being confident. Yeah. If you're positive and confident that you're going to have a good hunt, everything you do leading up to that hunt is better. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I constantly dwell on things and no, I can't do that. I can't do this. Like if I just go with my instinct and get in there and do my first thought, and this is going to work, everything is better. You wake up, you're more careful about your scent, you're more careful about your approach. Everything is better. And I do tend to get I hunt hard, and the other thing is the best thing that I've done is stop hunting so much.
That was my next question. Are you scouting more now that you've kind of gotten older?
And even just with kids and time and everything else, I'm spending 90% of my time analyzing trail camera pictures and data with that. I keep a journal that the wind direction of when this deer is coming through this piece and those kind of things, to put the past data back together of what they did the year before, those kind of things. And okay, if I never got a picture of that deer, and I've had 4 years of history with that deer, I never got a picture of that deer until November 3rd. I'm definitely not going to hunt October 1st through October 20th ever on that farm, unless I would get a picture of him all of a sudden in daylight. But why am I going to do that if he's never done that in 4 years? Except I'm going to go in there and I have mainly small pieces. I'm going to burn it out. My town farm that holds some giant deer in the rut, if you hunt it, I hunted it 4 times this year. And it's a phenomenal piece. There would be guys that would hunt it every single day. I hunted it 4 times. You can't go in there and overhunt it. It just, you can't do it.
Yep. You're absolutely right, man. Solid information.
Yeah. So now that'd be my biggest takeaway is hunt less, but hunt smarter.
Yep. Scout more.
Yep.
I dig it.
Use your pieces that are not great. If you want to burn up, if you just want to go hunt, use your pieces that you don't really have a lot of intel on, or you've never really scouted it, you've never really hunted it. Go there and hone your. I think it is important. These guys that sit and don't hunt until November, I think that is crazy, because I'm a freaking hot mess. I mean, my first 3 hunts, I forget 90% of the crap. And I'm like, oh man, I got to get this dialed in, or wait a minute, this isn't going to work.
It's really tough here. Like, because I mean, for us in Kentucky, it's like, I'm trying to slam one right out of the gate. You know what I mean? I want to kill a big velvet buck. Still have not had a really solid one to go after. I've been kind of picky, but I said to myself this year, if I see something in the 140s or 150s in velvet and it's cool and I like it, I'm going to kill it.
Yep.
And I'll end it. But I have such a hard time letting go of that 1 buck tag. Like, it's like,
see, we can kill 2.
I love hunting, man. And it really eats me up every year. So hopefully
we can
Lord
kill
willing,
2 bucks here, but it makes it.
I might be coming your way. So,
all right. Well, reach out if you do.
I will, for sure, man.
Yeah,
for sure.
Are you going to go down Southern Illinois where you're at before?
I'm thinking, I don't know. I mean, I kind of got some inspiration from some guys that I went to an outdoor show with. They were mailing letters and stuff and having some luck with that. So I don't know. I like hunting. I like hunting private and public. I don't care. I just want to be able to go have fun and be able to go hunt a decent deer,
Yep. Well, if you make it this way, let me know.
I sure will, man. So I can't thank you enough.
You can stay in Heath and Justin's Brokewood Mountain Suite.
As long as you clean the bed sheets,
That's Justin's job.
Well, Brent, it has been a blast with you, man. Thank you so much for hopping on here with me.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me.
How can some of our listeners reach out, man? If you're up for that? Yeah. What's the best way to follow along with you on Facebook, Instagram?
I'm old. My kids make fun of me that I don't know enough about Instagram. I post on Facebook and it goes to Instagram, so people see it on Instagram. I did make my first post ever on Instagram, which also shares to Facebook, I guess. Okay. Did you see my reenactment of the eclipse with my bald head and the light?
Yes, I did.
So that was my first one, and my teenager goes, "Dad, you're so stupid. You post stupid crap like that, and 1,600 people look at it, and I post something and 2 people look at it." But my Instagram is Buckfever3, BKFVR3. That was my license plate on my first car. And then Facebook is probably the best. I check that all the time. I'm old. I guess old people use Facebook. I don't know. So,
Well, we will be sure to tag you, man. Thank you so much.
Right. Sounds good, man.
We'll definitely, I'll keep in touch with you, dude.
Yeah. You come to Illinois, hit me up.
Yes, sir.
All right.
See you, buddy. See you.